the main topic, The Art of War by M.T Black. Does that stand for something?
No, no. Well, it was just used to be my ID on Dragon's Foot forum. It was Mount Black, believe it or not.
Oh,
So
Okay.
very
it's
cool.
like I said, it's a ridiculous pseudonym. I'm kind of stuck with it now, but it's it's a little memorable, so that's
It's
good.
recognizable, which is fantastic, right?
I get
Yeah,
it.
it's the brand.
Yeah.
I've been Silver Gecko since high school, so I get it.
Yeah.
So before we get into the Art of War, MT, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in the world of role playing games?
Yeah, yeah, long time role player. Been playing D&D since I was about 10. I'm in my mid 40s now, so I've been playing a lot of D&D. Started with Tom Mulvey Basic.
So as long as I've been
Um,
alive, got it.
oh yeah, yeah. And we basically played up to some. I'm kind of. I always think of myself as a bit more of an old school guy. I played up to about second edition.
All right.
Didn't play much. Played a bit of third edition, but I was mostly playing OSR style games like Sword and Wizardry. I think for a long time during the 3E and 4E era, and then like a lot of folk, kind of got back into mainstream D&D with 5E released because I liked it a lot. And um, when the DM, I'd always had a dream of writing, like so many folks who were DMs, of creating content. And so when the DMs Guild opened up, I began writing and did not have any great plans around that. Did not expect anything in particular, but was thrilled to find out I had an audience for my writing and loved doing it and just wrote and wrote and wrote, and a whole bunch of doors have opened for me since then, including probably, I guess, the career highlighters. I was one of the main writers on Baldur's Gate Descent to Avernus, so
Ooh.
coming
Nice.
out later this year. So
Really nice.
that's a culmination, and that all just started with putting stuff up on the DMs Guild.
Um, so the one thing I noticed, we cover a lot of DM's Guild content, and
Yeah.
I noticed that every product is required to have the DM's Guild logo. Yours is
Mm.
gold.
Yes. Yeah. So earlier, actually, no, early last year, I was invited by Chris Lindsay, who's kind of he's the Wizards of the Coast guy who runs the DMs Guild, to be part of their DMs Guild Adept program. So they created the Adept program a couple of years ago just to take some creators that they like and highlight their work. And we get given early access to the hardcover books. So I got my copy safe Saltmarsh a couple of months ago, etc. So we can create tie-in content for those books,
All right.
and that's part of the Guild Adept program is to create some tie-in content.
Neat.
But it's a bit broader than that, as you can see. And
Right.
the Guild Adepts get that nice shiny gold logo.
Yeah, it's pretty. I was
Oh
like, I
yeah.
want a gold logo. I want one, but they don't just hand those things out like Skittles.
Not
Taste
quite.
the rainbow.
So, what's your most favorite memorable D&D moment other than casting heat metal on a giant flail?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's always a hard one. I mean, I'll tell you something current that I really enjoyed last week. I don't know if it's the most favorite, but it's the one that comes to me. We've been having a lot of conflict in the party lately, like kind of good planned conflict. Because one of our players picked up Black Razor, our ancestral guardian.
Ooh.
Barbarian's extremely unhappy about that because
He
Black
wants-
Razor sucks souls out of them and destroys them forever. And so this nice conflict's been brewing in the party for a while, and it came to blows a couple of weeks ago, which can be a dangerous situation. But this was all really good, and the Barbarian had finally decided to leave the party, and we rolled up a new character for the player. We put together a whole backstory. We were working it all together. Last week, he gets up at the breakfast table, gives his spiel about why, he's not aligned with them anymore. He's got to go. And then the bard stood up and cast keys on him to keep him there for the
Wow.
rest of the quest.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I just, I had no idea, completely unexpected. And I love that as a DM when you've got your plan, you know how it's all going to go, and then someone comes up and does something that takes it in a completely different direction and that made perfect sense as well. So, yeah, I enjoyed that thoroughly, and I really enjoyed being surprised as a DM.
You know,
Sure.
in my opinions, that's my favorite reason for playing role player games because I love video games, but there's so much limitation to those. And every time I play D&D, the players just find a way to catch me on my toes or surprise me in ways that just make for an amazing experience. And that's that at its
Yeah,
core, that in my opinion is my favorite part of D&D.
Although my experience has
yeah.
been, it only takes a clipboard.
Fucking he used a clipboard to pretend to do a surprise inspection to bypass everything, but bastard.
It worked.
Yeah.
All right. So, MT Black, do you have any moments where you feel like you failed as a DM or as a player, and what did you learn from that?
Oh, there's I mean, this is going back years and years and years ago. We were in the 1E days. We were playing a Greyhawk campaign, I think, and I was going through a stage again. I was 13 or 14 and really slavishly adhering to the rules. And we, the party were traveling across this particular area, and they had a very long trip to go on. And I just got in my head, we're going to do this exactly rules as written. You know, we're going to roll for encounters every mile or something like that. And yeah, damn it, they're going to feel this journey. And it was ridiculous. I think we played, I'm don't exaggerate. I think we played 2 or 3 hours without encountering a monster, without any treasure. I have no idea what we actually did for 2 or 3 hours, but it was it was it was ridiculous. And the lesson there, of course, is use the rules to make your game better. You know, the rules themselves, they're not God. They didn't come down off the mountain. You know, they're there to serve a purpose. But that was a classic noob mistake, and I'm sure lots of us have got caught up and wrecked our games at times trying to stick to the script a bit too closely. That was it. 3 hours of D&D, yeah.
Wow, yeah, and I think that's an experience that, like you said, a lot of people go through. I know I personally have at this point decided to just ignore random encounters that are time consuming. Now, I don't get rid of random encounters per se, but mostly like the stuff that's combat focused, I tend to avoid unless the players decide to start some shit, which does happen. For instance, there was I actually stole most of the ideas from Horde of the Dragon Queen. I know a lot of people give a lot of shit to that, but I actually really liked it. There's a segment where
I really like that adventure too.
You're doing the long journey, and they give you all these little encounters, and some are combat, but a lot of them are just kind of shit that happens, you know? Whether it's, hey, off in the distance you see a mystical fucking unicorn. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, if the players decide to, well, I want a unicorn horn, man, for a dagger. Let's go hunt. Okay, well, then some shit goes down. But you can... Yeah. Every encounter doesn't have to be combat related, and it can just be passing. The one thing I think we've talked about on the show before is specifically with the new Baldur's Gate into... what is the name of that new...
Avernus.
What's it called?
Descent into Avernus.
Yeah, that one. I can never remember the last part of it.
But
the hell, right? The kinds of hell. But something you never see happen is just demons and angels fighting overhead while you guys are trying to fight some goblins. You know, just shit like that flying over happening. You can do encounters without having to make them, 3 hours long.
Yeah.
I'll admit, every time I hear about that setting, I forget what the character's name is, but there's a space marine in Warhammer 40K. And part of his backstory is he basically gets stuck in the realm of chaos, which is basically hell.
Right.
And his train of thought is, I'm stuck here in hell. Excellent, target-rich environment.
That's funny.
And just fights in hell for thousands of years.
Very cool.
So, can you tell us a little bit about the art of war for D&D players and how it came to be?
Yeah, I don't know if your viewers know about the Art of War, but it's
Oh,
basically
yes.
this ancient Chinese classic on military strategy.
We're Americans. That's like required reading at third grade.
Oh, is it really?
No.
That's so fucked up. A war-hungry nation.
Yeah.
God. Oh,
So I don't need to tell you anything about the Art of War itself, the original book, or you're all on top of that, or
Well, it depends on our listeners. I would say give us a overview, but I know that
cliff
Yeah.
notes.
the cliff notes would be fantastic.
yeah. So it was written by a fellow called Sun Tzu, who was a general, but a bit of a philosopher as well, about 2,500 years ago. And it's kind of been the classic text on military strategy in East Asia, almost pretty much right down to the present day. It was kind of discovered by the West. The first European translations appeared in like think about the 19th century,
All right.
and then the first English translations at the start of the 20th century. And what's happened now is folk have taken those principles and just applied them to every aspect of life. So you can get the art of war for business executives, the art of war for writers. You can even get the art of war for lovers, which is hilarious. But there are something like 30 or 40 editions of this book re-released every single year. It's actually quite huge.
tactics for the bedroom.
It's a whole industry. So a couple of years ago, I was working on another book called The Player's Companion. And one of the chapters I wrote in that was a chapter of really basic player tactics. And just for a bit of flavor, I grabbed a few Sun Tzu quotes. And as I was reading through it, I thought, actually, there's a heck of a lot in this book, The Art of War,
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
a pretty short book, that is really applicable, much more than I realized, to D&D. And that just kind of became an idea that I filed away to write a book, The Art of War for D&D players. And finally, at the start of this year, I had a couple of months. I'd been building up little bits and pieces of information over a couple of years. And at the start of the year, I had a couple of months to really knuckle down and write it. So yeah, it's something I've really wanted to do for a while.
And,
That's kind of the backstory.
and I'll admit, I cracked up when I read through the supplement because I actually did read the Art of War itself. So
Yeah.
That's one thing that really stands out. As you structured your outline or your table of contents, you got all these different chapters, and in every chapter, you have successfully taken a Sun Tzu quote and compiled it to fit how you can convert that into useful information into D&D. And
Yeah.
I mean, you did it in such a way that it was an amazing read through. I was so engaged when I was reading through this, and that gives a whole lot of weight to the quality of your writing and your research and how you can just connect two dots. I wouldn't have. I mean, some of these things I'm reading, I was like, I don't really get that. Oh shit! Okay, that makes sense. And you did a really great job. So would you be willing to tell us a little bit about making plans? The quote is, "The leader who wins a battle does much planning before the battle is fought. The leader who loses a battle does but little planning."
Yeah, that's right. That is one of the that's almost Sun Tzu's key quote. In a way, the whole idea of planning really pervades the art of war, and and that was a little bit of a funny chapter to write, because I know so many people play D&D with almost no planning. You know what I mean? You jump together. Oh, hey, the old wizard in the tavern. Let's go. Let's do it. And 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 you can have a really successful and a really fun time playing D&D with doing things that way, and I'm completely down with that. However, as you go through things, it's remarkable how much more effective you can be as a playing party when you make plans. It is so. One simple thing I said just in town is to do some research, and I spoke a bit more about that in chapter 13. But so often in all these adventures, you'll find that there are 4 or 5, 6 bits of really helpful information buried in the town. If you just take the time to go around and ask, to visit the local library, to talk to the wizard, to do whatever else, Um, Another thing which can be underutilized is just downtime activities, for example. Maybe partly because they've only really been developed strongly in Xanathars, but especially the Xanathar ones, there are some really useful ones. I think the carousing downtime activity is great. To build a couple of key contacts, say in a Waterdeep or a Daggerford or whatever your home base town is, or Baldur's Gate, things like that. Don't cost much money, and that sort of stuff can be done offline, often too, between sessions. These are just putting plans together. So that's kind of prepping for the adventure. But planning, putting together a plan for your battle as well. And again, if your party is, you know, there's there's the Bahur at the other end of the cavern. We're just going to rush in and get it, or there's the a giant stronghold. We're just going to rush in and take it, and that works out for you. That's great.
If
But the fun thing, let me tell you, the fun thing as a player, though, if you do actually put together a good plan and your DM's not used to it, is how you can stuff up his plans so badly. You know what I mean? The encounter that he thought was going to be really tough and drop a couple of you guys, you're like a hot knife through butter. It really can make massive difference. And I give a big worked example there from Storm King's Thunder of taking out the hill giant stronghold. And the contrast between just running up to the front door as opposed to as opposed to infiltrating in secretly, and the difference that can actually make. So
absolutely, the reason are all giggling because in our Storm King's Thunder game, you got the cloud giant that gives them kind of a ride early on. And
yeah,
so the entire downtime, this guy decides, well, he's got all collections of lore books and everything, right? Well, yeah. I'm going to spend the entire time reading and learning about giants.
oh yeah,
I'm like, okay. So then he's like, did I read about that? Did I read about that? Did I read about
yep.
that? Every goddamn yeah, And it just was a headache.
And I find it funny you mentioned the hill giants too, because I once again spam precipitation.
Oh yeah, you tricked that. What is that giant king person's name?
The queen, whatever.
Whatever it was.
I don't
I think
remember.
I turned it to a girl, but anyway.
I just remember how precipitation can let you create objects in less than an hour. So it's like, and she likes food. So I'm like, chicken,
Yep.
barbecue.
He just kept making food to get what he wanted.
It's a good example of good planning versus piss poor planning. Because in the same campaign, a good version of piss poor planning is throwing black powder into a laser beam.
Yeah,
Oh.
that did not end well.
So
I killed so many dwarves.
So planning is
Yeah.
super important, and the structure you break down. Obviously, we didn't go into all the details of your chapter.
Yeah.
You gave a really nice overview, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of important information in here that really can improve you as a player. Which is one of the reasons why I love this Art of War for D&D players, because it's a nice, good structure to help players become better.
Yeah.
Which also means
And that was
I don't want my players reading it because it's gonna make my life harder.
Oh, it's lots of fun. No, that was that was one thing I was thinking of as well. Like one of the problems with releasing player-facing content is, you might release this great archetype, but the DM says, nah, not in my campaign. The DM's always, and that's fine, but the DM's always the gatekeeper as a player. You're trying to buy stuff. I wanted to write a book that, as a player, you could use that didn't require, say, options to be enabled in the campaign.
Sure.
Something that was just full of useful information that any player could pick up and use. Just probably one more thing, just about that making plans. There's something about planning for practicing deception, which again for Sun Tzu that is the pinnacle of good generalship is deceiving the enemy. And if you just taking that idea of how can I actually fool the enemy, how can I make the enemy think I'm far away when I'm actually close? How can I make the enemy think that I'm nearby when I'm actually far away? Things like that. Again, you can make. Oh, you can be so much more combat effective when you start to introduce a little bit more of deception into your battle plans. It's yeah, very very powerful tactic.
One of the quotes I recall the most from Sun Tzu was his advice to summarize his advice in regards to sieges, which was, if you're going to lay siege to a castle, don't.
Yep.
Yeah, it, yeah, it requires a lot more resources than it's worth, and that castle's
Yeah.
not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You can walk around it.
That's funny.
Yeah, so true.
So that actually reminds me. I don't know if it was a Chinese story I heard about a village that was going to be under siege by enemies, and they were clearly outnumbered, outmatched. And one of these gentlemen, I don't know if he was a general or what, I vaguely remember because it was years ago, but in the end he says, well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to all go inside your houses, hide, and open all the gates. And they do that, and then he goes out and just sits on the front,
Oh yeah.
and it's like playing an instrument or something. And they come up and they're you people don't do that, so it made them very
Paranoid?
about where there's nobody here and the
Walk up
gates
to
are
a
wide
city.
open. So instead of actually engaging them, they
Yeah.
just left.
Yep.
So
It's
now-
a trap.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great example of using deception because they knew they would lose if they engaged them, so they tried to find a way to outsmart them. So now obviously that's a very heinous
Right.
way, but I could totally see a bard or a rogue going out there doing that and then rolling a deception check to put some sort of unease inside of the enemies. So
Yeah, exactly.
so
Yeah.
fantastic.
That guy's nuts. I don't want to deal with that kind of nuts.
Well, there was another story from Sun Tzu. That was his name, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sun Tzu. Was that
Yep.
he was talking to the emperor? I think it was the emperor, saying that they didn't have
Yes.
enough men to battle or to fight,
Yep.
and he said that he can turn anybody into a warrior. And he laughed at the idea, and he said, "I can turn those maidens into warriors." And they laughed. So he came up to one, killed one of them, and told the other ones to pick up a sword. And within weeks, they were trained warriors.
Yes.
Jesus,
Yeah,
that's
that's a-
horrible.
It is horrible. Yeah, that is a pretty famous story. I think what I heard was he had commissioned two of them to be officers, two of the concubines to be officers, and when he gave them orders, they just giggled instead. And I doubt this story is true, but he killed them and then said, if your officers aren't obeying your orders, you don't have an army. And yes, after that, the next two officers, not surprisingly, were a bit more cooperative, and allegedly they became a fierce fighting force. But I think, yeah, it's probably an apocryphal story.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't want to be hung up too much on the planning and the deception thing, but I love to read, and I'm reading through the Stormlight Archives again, and there's these very powerful magical items called shard blades, but they're always wielded by men. And there's one female that gets it, and these things disappear and reappear like a hex blade, right? Where they can just make it poof and reappear. And the guy, when he realizes this female has it, he says there is nothing more dangerous than a female with a magical weapon, because they're so unsuspecting. And as players, I feel like we can utilize that. And I think in D&D it might happen a little more, where you have assassins who are like concubines and stuff like that, where their whole job is to get close to people. Players can do that too. I usually use it as enemies and NPCs, but players, you can and not saying if you're playing a female character, not necessarily a female yourself, but if you're playing a female character, using that sensuality, or the other way around, if you're trying to woo a queen as a guy or whatever, or a queen as a girl, I guess, whatever way you swing, I guess, leveraging that as a way to get close to somebody and just while they're sleeping. Because why go through all the trouble to go through an entire army of defenses when you can just slip into their bed and stab them while they're sleeping,
Or just clean
Yep.
the press inspector.
Yeah, motherfucker. I was gonna go through. I wanted to talk. Could you tell us a little? You've got a lot of information in here.
I
So,
know, I know.
so
Yeah. Hit what's interesting to you. Yeah,
well, that's the problem. It's all interesting, but
Yeah.
we can't cover it all.
yeah.
So the one thing I would like to talk about is in chapter 3, your strategic
Mm,
combat. You
mm.
have some really interesting details. Can you talk a little bit on the chapter?
Mm,
Specifically, I liked what you did with handling superior forces.
yeah,
Could you tell us a
yeah,
little bit about that?
yeah. It's definitely a favorite chapter of mine, actually. This one, because in in putting the book together, sometimes I had ideas that I wanted to talk about. For example,
Mm-hmm.
there are things like, oh, I want to talk a bit about the action economy, or I want to talk about put together some recommended spells, things like that. But there were places um, where Sun Tzu kind of took control of the narrative, and I hadn't necessarily been thinking, but then I was like learning from Sun Tzu, and he was, and this is a chapter where realistically what he has written really drove the chapter. I didn't come into this chapter thinking, here's what I want to say. He'd already laid it out, and I was actually thinking, how do I apply these principles to D&D? So he had these five essentials to victory. Knowing when to fight, handling superior forces, having a common spirit, using surprise, assessing combat capacity. And it was a really fun exercise to see, how do I apply these ideas to the D&D party. Now, the one you talked about, specifically handling superior forces, like, part of what I wanted to do, and I read a lot, did a lot of research for this, and read a lot of older tactical books, because they have released tactical books for D&D before. For example, 4E, they had the player strategy guide, and and Pathfinder's got a few things like that. And um, one of the frustrations I had with those books was they had a lot of good information, but there was often a lot of a real lot of color text as well. And I really wanted this to be a book of, you pick up, you look at a page, and have lots of bullet points where you can just go there and tick down ideas. And that's what I wanted with handling superior forces. I wanted to say, hey, you've got someone who's probably a bit tough for you to handle in pitched battle. What are 4 or 5 different ways you can use to try and tackle that? They're not always going to be applicable, and that's where we kind of got there. And there's a lot of overlap there as well,
Mm-hmm.
and so it ended up being just cross-referencing these other guys. But that's something I really enjoyed the chapter, and it's a section, I think, on the superior forces that's very relevant, I think, to a lot of players, where you think, no, we have to avoid this fight. Not necessarily. With some good tactical play, you can really punch far above your weight. For example, using control magic allows you to, you can take on forces that would annihilate you in a pitched battle, a straight pitched battle, using control magic, for example,
Yeah,
things like that.
there was a situation that anybody that listens to the show in the past kind of has heard before, but the spell Phantasmal Force is a really good example of that.
Mm.
Because one of my players, the players were meant to be outnumbered. They were put in a war situation where they were a single
Oh yeah.
outpost against an orc horde coming at them.
Yep.
So my player decided to use Phantasmal Force on one of the leaders and described him, summoning Grumsh and telling him that war blood is not to be shed this day, for there is blood and honor that will be gained at the rising dawn, or some long bullshit spiel basically saying come back later. And he failed like all the checks, and I'm like, all right, he kept reiterating he's promising in blood and glory and
Mm.
honor for me, and I'm like, all right. He commands them to turn around, and some of them dissented and ended up fighting anyway. But they basically turned the whole thing around and walked away, and I'm just like, motherfucker.
Brilliant.
So ever since then, I've been a major fan of Phantasmal Force and control spells like that allow the
Yeah.
players to change the narrative in their favor if
Yeah.
the dice are in their favor, and that day they certainly were.
That's a great example.
Oh,
Yeah, I
yeah,
love
it
that.
was.
I
This
love that.
player is incredibly smart when it comes to these spells.
Oh yeah, fucking bastard. We had he sold his he was a knight an eldritch knight and sold his sword or his big giant weapon to a smith to get some money and then just summoned it back later. And then he just was going town to town selling it and summoning it back. I'm like, motherfucker. So
Yep.
eventually, little posters started showing up of warnings inside the like merchant thing, because I wasn't gonna let him have infinite money indefinitely. But
Don't buy this dude's sword. Yeah.
so anyways, so yeah, so control magic is a really great example, and you've got many other detailed things in here.
Mm.
Definitely. This, like I keep saying, this is a must read for any D&D player, even for the DM, because these tactics are just as valuable for me as the DM to torture. I mean, to help my players enjoy a game.
Aha.
Completely.
So,
Yeah.
what's this having in common, Spirit?
Yeah, this that's that's interesting. It's a now it was a little bit of a this is one of the 5 headings for Sun Tzu,
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking, crap, shit, where do I how do I make this happen? But I realized a lot of new players and uh, they sometimes they don't realize how important it is actually to be on the same page once combat starts. Like it's a real newbie thing. Like it can be very exciting. Wow, I can run, I can stab something with my sword, and it's like the Keystone Cops. Everyone runs off in every direction. Oh, I'm going over here. I'm going over here. And a classic thing with new players sometimes. Oh, I'm pissed off with the rest of the party. I'm just going to walk down the corridor on my own. Things like that. It's a it's a it, I, my idea there was to say, actually, guys, it's not quite don't split the party, which I think is a little bit misused, but it's a realistically, you're in this very hostile environment. You need to work together. You need to have a reason. Another thing happens when you've got evil characters sometimes in the party where, oh well, I don't care about you guys. Why am I staying here? I'm just going to go and sleep in the inn today, and you can go off and rescue the princess or whatever else. It's part of this is strategic, but part of this is you're compact as a player to say there needs to be good reasons for you to be adventuring together. There needs to be good reasons for you to be having a certain level of cooperation, or you're not going to have a very effective game. So that was some of the ideas I was trying to get across there, and the whole thing of I mentioned there. Clerics who refuse to heal. I had a cleric like that, a few years ago, and he was like, "Oh, I need to save my spell slots for myself," It's like, no. You've got a role to play in the party. If you don't play, we're going to we may struggle.
Actually, that's a really great segue into.
Actually, in the point you just made, I find it to be a two-way street sometimes, because I remember one game in particular. We submitted a one-page backstory per request of the DM in a game of Pathfinder. And the very city he made where we all started, I felt looked at the DM and said, "Why the heck am I here? Have you not read my backstory?" You
yeah.
You get the idea.
Yeah.
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 Anyway, another section you tackle next is the technical roles, and I think you do a good job of breaking it down as well as tying it into the original text. And actually, on a side note, I think the way you broke it down, I liked quite a bit because it reminded me quite a bit of a D&D 4th edition,
Yeah.
which, unfortunately, for better or worse, I think a lot of people unjustly crap on. But I think it had a lot of good things going for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is probably in some ways the whole tactical roles was possibly the hardest part of the book, and it pervades not just this chapter, but it really pervades the whole book. And if you do a lot of reading in this area, you'll know there's probably 6 or 7 different ways people have sliced up the tactical roles that you can play in combat. I've read a number of guides, and people come up with their own ideas. I did. Ian's right. Like, I deliberately decided in the end I want to try and stick a bit to 4E, just because I thought there'll be some familiarity, and I also thought it was a pretty reasonable way to actually slice the roles up as well. I thought it had a lot going for it, but I one of the things I struggled a bit with was this whole idea of the controller and what the controller role is, because there's a lot of different definitions for what control is, what a control effect is, and that's kind of drifted a bit with video games as well. There's different ideas there, and so much of this book was around categorization and definition, and just trying to come up with a good understanding of what control is and what control magic is, because it really is. It's the control magic is arguably the most powerful magic in the game.
You don't actually damage them, but you screw around with them.
That's right, and for folk just coming into the game, you don't. That's not intuitively obvious. You think the fellow who's dealing out the most firepower is the fellow who's the most useful, but actually the wizard who has mastered the art of control can make. Can make impossible fights winnable, and winnable fights a cakewalk when you use control magic effectively.
Yeah,
Tasha's hideous laughter.
I was gonna say a really great example
yeah.
of that is on some of my combats. I like to do wave combat, so they engage 4 enemies, and then a bell sounds, and every round more come. And one of my I don't know, I remember if it was a sorcerer or a wizard, but he broke my encounter by putting a goddamn force wall in the entrance.
Yep.
So they couldn't come in. So they cleared them out. They let a few in. They put another one up, so they controlled the flow. I'm like, fuck.
Some
brilliant.
It was basically a feeding of XP at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a perfect example. There's someone who knows how to play the game. You mentioned Tasha's hideous laughter. We had that, and it's funny, for a low-level spell that can be incredibly effective. We had a situation, again, we're in the Underdark, we're kind of doing a bit of a hack on Out of the Abyss at just this moment, and they were fighting the Beholder on the bridge, and our wizard a bit brainlessly did his classic thing of he's an invoker dropping the fireball on the party, and didn't realize that he just burnt this wooden bridge out from underneath the whole party.
Whoops.
Yeah, whoops. And they were in some strife while they tried to regroup. But that simple Tasha's hideous laughter just let them take the Beholder out for 1 or 2 rounds while they regrouped and actually got their shit back together, because they were flying all over the place trying to, after the bridge dropped out. So once you realize the power of taking a monster out of action for 1 round. Most fights go for 3 or 4 rounds. You just delay a monster coming into combat by 1 round. You have probably increased your combat effectiveness by 25 or 30%. It's incredibly powerful. Yeah. And I wanted to capture that idea with controllers and how important they are.
I know I made Justin hate to spell banishment with a passion.
Banishment is a very, very powerful spell. All right, guys, I've banished him. Everyone ready your bows, your swords, and your spells, because as soon as his ass appears, we're going to light him up. Fuck.
Yep.
Or my go-to example was when we were fighting some dragon riders, and I casted banishment on the dragon.
So the rider fucking
yeah.
Banished.
Fantastic.
Or actually, the other week I played a one-shot where we actually rolled well in stealth. We came to a room like, okay, there's a dragon in there and 2 really powerful-looking fire elementals. I'll twin spell haste on you 2 barbarians.
That's a powerful combo.
Haste on barbarians. We've I tell you, I may have almost made a mistake with my my barbarian was frustrated, and he's more of a tank, but he wanted to be a little bit more of a damage dealer, and I gave him a legendary weapon, but it allows him to cast haste once a day. Like, oh shit, he is. Oh my god, he is powerful now. I thought it's one little spell, but no. Oh man.
Actually, during the one shot, I think I described what happened. Like it was like watching a wood chipper in action.
Yeah.
That dragon did not even act.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
I mean, everyone knows haste is just a fantastic ability. Yeah.
Right.
What about chapter 5's use of energy?
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
the
That was.
the
Sorry.
no, no, it's okay. I love the quote here from Sun Tzu. The energy developed by good warriors is as the momentum of a round stone rolled down a mountain thousands of feet in height.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic.
Some of these when like that whole use of energy thing again, it's a chat because I've followed Sun Tzu's headings and you look at that and you think I'm not sure what to do here, and then it came to me, that's where we'll talk about the action economy, and tying those two ideas together. And some of the quotes are, yeah, they're just gorgeous. They are I mean, there was another one I think for the striker. What did I quote there? The onrush of a conquering force is like the bursting of pent up waters into a chasm 1,000 fathoms deep,
That's awesome.
It's just, yeah, fantastic color. But the whole action economy, this is again another thing where I found because I mean, this book is everything I've got, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
this is everything I knew I put into this book. And part of it was for folk who were probably like myself a couple of years ago, who played a metric ton of D&D, but possibly hadn't always engaged with it from a tactical perspective. And I was aware that people were having these discussions that I couldn't really be part of because I hadn't really engaged with the game that way. And this is part of my journey in terms of just understanding that tactical idea of the game, and the discussions around the action economy were one of those, understanding what the action economy is and how to use it. And especially because in 5e, I think, as we all know now, like the action economy is just incredibly potent in 5e, like actually understanding that. I hinted to that before by saying actually taking a monster out of combat for one round is enormously potent in 5e. That wasn't the case in first edition, AD&D, for example, where fights went for 9 or 10 rounds, and were mostly attrition contests. So, yeah, I wanted that. That's one thing. Another chapter I think is really important, and something that really transforms players once you actually start to understand how the action economy works and where your character can exploit that a little bit. Suddenly, you're pumping yourself up to 11 there.
Yeah, and you really did a good job of giving not only the details, but you actually gave several specific class examples. And while you talk about some other stuff, the one I want to poke at the most is the sorcerer, because in my
Oh yeah,
opinion, the sorcerer is one of the few that can bend and break the action economy in their
yeah,
favor if you play it right. Because
Yeah.
what I see happen most often with, well, first of all, the quickening and the twinning and stuff, both of those
yeah,
give you additional actions that others doing the same thing wouldn't actually have,
yeah.
effectively increasing your action economy. And then what happens is at least in my experiences, they forget that they can like convert slots into more points so that they can do this more.
Exactly.
And it's such a powerful way to give your group an advantage. And Ian talked earlier about twinning haste is a great example. That is one of the best increases in action economy that I can think of. Because not only did you twin a spell that's supposed to target one person, but it's fucking haste that gives them extra actions.
So you've created two extra actions, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, very powerful.
And so go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, and the classic example with sorcerer, I think a lot of you guys and a lot of you listeners will know, is the sorcerer paladin combo, which is probably the most powerful combo in the game. Where again, you're casting a full spell on your bonus action, then you've got you're smiting away as a paladin on your regular action, and burning through your nice your sorcerer spell slots as well. That your additional, like it is that is a beast, that combination.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was it that we said Jasper's one time? So what spells do you have, Paladin? Well, I have spells, but let's face it. Okay, I'm pretty documenting these as fuel for smite.
Exactly.
What
It's
spells do
fuel.
you have prepared? What? Like, why? Well, you can heal, right? Okay.
Yeah.
When I kill stuff, it won't hurt you no more. Is that the same as healing?
Yeah. And actually, it's a good point too. Just one more point on that. My one of the reasons I wanted to write this book was to help folk get the most out of those character classes, because certainly in the older days you saw people crap on sorcerers quite a bit,
Mhm.
say in the forums, and people would say, "Oh, why would I get a sorcerer? It's so limited compared to a wizard or something like that." And they weren't getting a lot of love. And obviously, when you start to unpick some of these things, as you've just said, then you realize, wow, these guys are incredibly potent. You just need to be using them correctly. Same with bards in some circles didn't get a great deal of love either. I think with some newer players, and you think, my goodness, you look at some of the control effects that bards get later on. Our bard is very often the most valuable player. Like in our party at the moment, 11th level bard, and he is. Yeah, he plays it brilliantly, but he very often, he ripped out that geese that kept our tank. They wouldn't have had a tank left anymore without that. That was play of the day. But I think I wanted to explain some of these things so folk could say, oh yeah, actually I can see, wow, what a brilliant character option sorcerer is, and here's how I actually exploit and utilize that. Whereas you get the bare rules in the player's handbook, you mightn't necessarily learn, here's how I actually um, um, really put the pedal to the metal on this character.
Right.
I don't know why, but that made me think about how a lot of players, when it comes to how they think some classes will play out or how effective they are, they don't necessarily think them through,
Yeah.
or in some cases they may overthink it. And I think one good example is on a Facebook one time. One player asked, "So I want to create a faceless man from Game of Thrones as a player character. How do I do that?" And there were a lot of people who were going, "Oh, you take X levels of rogue, X levels of warlock, and so on and so forth." Whereas me and one other dude were like, "Or you could just play Couch of Whispers Bard. That's literally what they
Yep.
are."
Yeah. Bards are fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in my opinion, and I truly believe this, the Bard is the best healer in the game. Because one successful Vicious Mockery reducing a single attack is more potent than any number of cure wounds that a spellcaster can do. So
Yeah,
that's just my
yeah,
thought.
it's amazing, amazing power. Like vicious mockery to give disadvantage to your opponent.
Yeah.
Very, very potent.
You got that axe? I would need to chop wood. You jackwagon.
What about weak and strong points?
Yeah, I enjoyed putting this chapter together a lot as well. And again, it was one of those ones where I looked at the Sun Tzu's heading and then thought, what do I do here? And then it's made a lot of sense once I started to put it together. But it was the essence of it is saying, well, what are monsters resistant and immune to? What damage types are going to be effective against what monsters? And I wanted to break that. What you often hear people say there is, oh, force damage is really good, poison damage is really crap. You know what I mean? Like, that's the simplistic view of how we do these things. I wanted to break it down by type, because it's a little bit more complex than that. For example, obviously force damage continues to be brilliant, and if you can deal out force damage, you do so. But when you actually break it down by type, poison damage is actually really effective against a lot of monsters. And maybe it doesn't get as much love as it necessarily should, because everyone knows that it's the one that the most people are immune to. But the things like constructs and elementals really throw those percentages out of whack.
Yeah.
Poison damage, very effective against giants. It's very effective against Fey creatures, for example. Really effective against oozes and plants and things like that. So I think just being aware of some of that. Now, some people are going to look at this is the most complex table I've got in the book, and they're going to say,
Yeah.
oh, that's too much math for me. But I tried to break it down to a couple of basic principles to say, just really be aware of some of these things, and some obvious things like, broad range of creatures resistant to fire, cold and lightning, obviously, they're but acid, very effective against most things except oozes and some fiends. Not so effective, but everything else. So acid's a great idea. Just some of those things there, so carrying around a few vials of acid is always a helpful thing to do, for example, if you're not sure what you're going to encounter. Yeah, that was part of what I was trying to nail there.
As sort of works great against Chucky dolls.
What?
You know,
Fucking Chucky.
you know what I'm talking about.
Movie reference.
No,
No.
game reference.
Oh, you're talking
I know.
about when we did the haunt too. Yeah. They were fighting
Oh,
an
the
ooze,
doll.
and I had that doll. I don't know if you've played the Haunt 2 or know of it, but of course I assume everyone knows about that.
I know
It's
the guys, yeah,
it's
yeah.
always on there. But basically, I have it like scrambling and crawling up on him, and they were fighting an
Oh.
ooze, and he couldn't get it off him, so he just jumped in the ooze, so it started melting her. He's
Brilliant.
like, "We'll see who dies first, bitch."
Who's on first?
Well, here's the thing. Her strength score sucked, so I could escape the ooze's grapple. She couldn't.
Yeah.
So, and you've got so much content here. I'm trying to pick and choose what I wanna talk about because there's so much amazing content here. Can you tell us about? Let's go right here. You have in your combat section. Is it chapter 7 here under combat maneuvers? Can you tell us a little bit about what went into that and how you went about making it? Specifically, I want to hear more about the stonewalling technique that you've got in here
Oh, yeah.
as well.
Yeah. So again, another one that Sun Tzu drove the idea of, was a chapter on maneuvers, and partly what I wanted to do here was I wanted to address a misconception some folk have said. Look, if you're not playing with the grid, then maneuvers and tactics don't really make any difference. Which if you're playing theatre of the mind, then you're not really playing a tactical game, which is completely wrong, and I can prove it easily. Next time in your theatre of the mind, put your wizard in the front row. That's a tactical decision, and tell me how it goes. You see that all of these things are actually, tactics are still very relevant. There's a
Agreed.
certain type of tactic that only comes out on the grid, but I wanted to put together a bunch of maneuvers that were really relevant to playing theatre of the mind. Relevant to both, but to say actually you are playing a tactical game as well when you're playing D&D, even when you're theatre of the mind. One of probably the one I spent most on was the idea of defending a flank, which if you're kind of familiar with military strategy and history, like flanking is always incredibly important. If you can flank the enemy force, you can very often turn the battle in your favor. And it depends on the DM a bit, but actually defending a flank is typically pretty important in D&D as well. That's because you've got your big chunky barbarian in the front row, and then you've got your wizard in the second row or the third row. And if someone can outflank you, they can come and stick their sword in your squishy little wizard and take him out of action. So I wanted to say, actually, here's a bunch of methods that you can use to defend a flank. You've got things like, obviously you can use the terrain to defend your flank, but by which I simply mean you've got a wall there, so no one can get to your wizard because there's a wall next. The party's next to a wall. You've got some attack interception things. You've got things that draw aggro or draw fire. I said as well, some of those things you can use to protect your flank. Some certain magical barriers, like putting grease next to the party is a fun thing to do if everyone comes up and tries to outflank you, and they go hell for leather then. So I wanted to speak a little bit about that. Now if you've got a DM who all the all the enemies just always attack the tank first, maybe that's a little bit less relevant. But as a DM, if your characters jump into a room and disperse immediately, you should be making them pay a little bit for that. A few goblins should be going after the squishies.
I agree very much.
Never mind, it's not important.
So
I just made a mistake. I'm just so worried about running this stupid campaign.
Yeah, stonewalling was something that you mentioned, and I coined that term, to be honest. I didn't in terms of I haven't seen it used in this way for D&D before. Obviously, it's stonewalling something in other areas, but I just wanted a tactical name for this idea of defending. and you can make a mistake and think I've always got to be swinging my sword to be effective. And actually, there are some times when, especially as a tank, just you being there and just tying down the big nasty is all you need to do to give your damage dealer time to rip off a spell, or give your controller time to do what he or she's doing. And it's just something worth it's obviously always worth thinking. Now, the action economy cost of stonewalling, by which I simply mean sitting there and dodging while in one-to-one combat or whatever in the front line, the action cost of that action economy cost goes up, because as you get higher, obviously you get extra attacks as a martial character. So you are giving up more. You need to be thinking about that and be aware of it. But you can use this again with, I think I made a note, you could use this with deception, for example. If the barbarian comes in at the far door, makes the whole army comes at him, the whole horde in the room comes at him, he stonewalls, but everyone else comes in from behind. You're going to annihilate that group, for example. So again, it's just part of thinking around, not just leaping into battle and swinging your sword.
Actually, when I was reading through that sections, especially when you're covering controlling spells, you actually give me inspiration. Just a note, listen to this part.
Excellent.
I can't just not hear you.
I know. But there was one point where I was like, you mentioned how good polymorph is. What if
what
if I transform the big bad evil guy or gal into a rabbit, and then drop him to a bag of holding, and then close it shut?
That's the polymorph is the classic buff and debuff spell. And you're right, in 5e the whole problem is, well, what do I do with the little bunny now? Because you don't want someone to accidentally step on it. Do you carry it around with you to keep it safe so it doesn't revert to its original form? We had that the other day where they transformed a demon into the little beast, and we're like, well, what do we do with this now? If we leave it here, we don't know what's going to. They ended up throwing it off a cliff. Obviously, it was almost the safest. There were some ethical qualms about that. It was like, I've got a kitten or a puppy I'm throwing off the cliff here, and no, it's actually a demon, So there were.
Grab it to a bag of holding. It'll suffocate eventually.
Yeah, but bag of holding's a good solution. Yeah.
That's interesting, because as a DM, you could take that approach of, well, they've got some moral quandaries from that, but what of the people that might actually see them, and how do they react to this?
Yeah.
You just become cruel and unusual.
Puppy killers. Yeah.
So you've got just a wealth of knowledge, and obviously, as we bring it to a close, we can't cover everything. We haven't even covered half of the stuff that I put in my notes that I wanted to talk about, because there's so much. You've got 13 chapters of content, and we just have barely scratched the surface of what you offer in this product.
And they're good chapters.
Is there anything particularly that you wanted to talk about that we haven't covered?
Look, one thing that I really enjoy, the chapter on attacking with magic. And in that was a hard one. It was like, I was thinking, how do I fit magic into this? Sun Tzu didn't chat about magic, but his original chapter was called Attacking with Fire. And I thought, that's kind of ties up together.
Okay. Yeah. DM's counsel, you clever SOB.
What's he saying?
Could the bunny rabbit damage itself to revert back to its original form?
I don't think they have the intelligence for that. Maybe MT knows. If somebody's polymorph, they lose their intelligence to the creature, right?
It's a bit ambiguous, actually, because it kind of says you retain your personality, but you have the attributes of the new form. So we have had that, which is they've polymorphed into something intelligent that's then committed suicide to revert back. So
that's funny.
That was a bit of a cheat, I think. Sorry, I'll get back to it. But attacking with magic, all I did there was I just went through and tried to find what I consider some of the best spells, for each type. Like, what are the best damage spells? What are the best control spells, debuff spells, and also some of the best spells by class. Again, I think for folk who are, and I won't even say new players, even intermediate and experienced, it can be, well, I've just gone to level 11. What 6th level spells do I want to look at here? And I just wanted to have a handy reference for people. Not to say these are the only good spells, they're not, but here are a bunch of really good classic spells that you want to look at. And I tend to use that all the time when I'm building a monster or a character now, going to these spell lists. And I did spend a lot of time actually researching that and trying to figure out, what are some good spells there. And if you're a magic user or like a wizard, I think you'll find that a useful, I think you'll find that a useful chapter, and you may hopefully see a couple of spells you haven't really thought about before. You might pick them up and give them a go.
There were a few spells I read through the chapter. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
Otto's irresistible dance really jumped out at me. I was like, shit, I don't even remember what that does. I was like, oh, that is useful.
Yeah.
So it really is a fantastic resource, especially for somebody who's new into jumping into to 5e and doesn't really know. I mean, because there's a lot of spells to go through. So if this gives you a really good guide of what to expect, though I'd be honest, as a DM, I'd be crossing off that fucking healing spirit bullshit. That's got to go.
You got to nerf it a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of it. But this is really great. You go through like debuffs, damage, utility uses, all that stuff, and the categorization. And I agree with everything that I'm looking at, which is just fantastic when it's a real testament to the research you put into it.
Yeah, I did. I went through basically every list of best spells on the internet, and there's dozens of them out there. I reckon I've probably looked at all of them just to make sure, I didn't miss anything, and just to make sure I'd didn't always agree with them, but I think I'd considered everything that folk have thought is a really great spell.
What was your favorite part about creating the Art of War?
I mentioned before how much I enjoyed writing the strategic combat chapter. That was a really a great example of learning from Sun Tzu. But I think one of the best things was when I found a really good quote. You mentioned how good some of the quotes were that just tied in and just seemed so relevant to D&D. I just loved that. And again, it was just magic when it came together.
Oh yeah,
it was
absolutely.
great fun.
I mean, even like some of the small points that Sun Tzu makes here and there are actually more brilliant than what you think about it. Like, there's a few that on the surface seems like, what? There's one quote, there's along the lines of like, how'd it go? 1 bushel of food taken from the land is worth 8 that you carry with you. I was like, what?
Oh yeah.
But it actually makes sense because it actually takes more resources to carry resources with you, but it takes less to just steal it as you go along.
Oh.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, no, it really is a good. I mean, it was a classic for 2,500 years, or has been for a reason, And it was the key text,
Right.
and it can look. It is really short too. Grab it online and read it. It is not a long book. It's only a couple of thousand words long, but it's really profound, actually.
You only need a couple of thousand words to learn how to kill people.
Actually, something I laugh at was I actually years ago bought a copy of The Art of War, and a couple weeks back when I was at my mom's, my brother's like, "Oh yeah, I bought The Art of War from Barnes and Noble." I'm like, "Huh, this looks a lot like the copy I bought." What? No, it's not. I bought it. It looks like the copy I bought.
So one of our listeners, before we close out the main topic here, Stormthor has asked,
Oh yeah.
how did you become an adept?
What? You mean gold tier?
Gold adept. Well, it's gold tier. Well, whatever. It's the adept logo, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's a Chris Lindsay, and for folk who don't know, Chris Lindsay runs both. He works for Wizard of the Coast. He runs both the DM's Guild and also Adventurers League. So that's kind of his thing, is dealing with the dealing with the crowds, so to speak. And he created that program, and it's essentially an invitation program. I He just reached out to me early last year and said, "Do you want to be join the Adept program?" And he hasn't actually said, "Here's the 5 things you need to do to kind of qualify for the Adept," but I think the best way, if you're out there writing content, is just to write and publish a lot of content and find an audience.
Right.
Find an audience. And it took me a while to find my audience as well. I often say to folk, I published I think 26 products before I had my first top 10. So I came here the long way, the long way around in a way. Keep writing, keep publishing, find an audience for your work, and that means maybe a bit of hunting for an audience, but also a little bit of maybe changing some of what you do or focusing on different areas, and that's the best way to get noticed.
Right.
And sometimes you just have to be patient
Yeah. We have a long
and
way to go.
persistent.
We've released 4 small things, though the Unearthed tips and tricks, which is similar to, it's not nearly as well done as your Art of War, but we have a section that's all about player improvement. But
Yeah.
that's like 80 pages, and I think that's the biggest thing I will ever publish because damn, that took too long.
Yeah. Oh, this is the honest truth. I really like that book too. I don't buy a lot of newer stuff off the guild because I get sent a lot of stuff for free. I don't need to buy it. That's actually one of the things I deliberately bought when it came out, and I
Aw.
thought it was really well done. That's no bullshit. That was very well done book. So well done, guys.
Thank you.
Do you guys realize what praise that is? That's fucking. That's like. That's. I don't even know what to compare that to. Thank you. That really means a lot. Can I like snip that and like put it in my product? Like.
Yeah,
that's
of course you
great.
can.
A
Yes.
comparison is the clouds parting as radiant light shines down from the
Yes,
sky.
that's how I feel right now.
Uh,
Yeah, I put my heart and soul in that, and it's just like it's about to hit silver, so that's exciting.
yeah,
But,
people should make sure go and buy that if you haven't bought already. Terrific book.
I mean, shoot,
Thank
I
you.
remember how psyched Justin was when a random YouTuber reviewed the product out of
I
nowhere.
think it was DM Dango.
Yeah.
Anyways, the Art of War for D&D players is an absolutely amazing product. You guys got to check this thing out. We're really running out of time here, so
Yeah.
I wanna say we have a link in our show notes directly to the product. When the show airs, there'll be links to it and stuff as well. And I'm gonna put one more link directly into the chat for Twitch here, so you guys can go and check it out yourself. It's an amazing product. Obviously, we just barely scratched the surface of the content that you have in here, MT. Before we close out our main topic, can you give Crit Nation a little taste of something you might be working on? Something coming up, maybe?
Releasing very soon is a book called Saltmarsh Encounters by the Guild Adepts. That's a whole bunch of random encounters to spice up your game if you're looking for that sort of thing. We released Waterdeep Encounters last year, and I know Justin at the top of the program said he's done with random encounters, so he might not want to pump this one. But we released Waterdeep Encounters last year. That was very popular. And something else to mention is a book called Harper's Tale, which is coming out later on the year by Matt Corley. And it's like a charity Kickstarter for Friends of Kids with Cancer. I think you guys might know Matt Corley, or you may have done some work with him. I know I saw you did the old Tales of the Old Margrave you were giving away or something, and he was the main author on that.
Main author, yep.
So I'm one of the authors on Harper's Tale. So I think that Kickstarter will be going live in a few weeks. So please keep an eye out for that if you want to support that cause.
Yeah, when it comes out, if you want to shoot me a reminder, I'll share that link on our Facebook page.
Will do.
So
Will do. And there's tons more coming up. I'm working on Adventurers League stuff as well. There's I'm writing away, guys.
probably really busy.
I almost asked the question, like, no, that's the time and place for that. And that's about it.
I think that'll do it for our main topic today. Before we move on to our final segment, our Unearthed tips and tricks, we have one more gift to give away. Compliments of Loresmith.
Each episode, we will draw another lucky subscriber's name, and they will win the best-selling adventure, The Claws of Madness, Compliments of Lawsmith. Lawsmith is a small indie team of creative artists who remember exploring the realms together with friends, finding incredible places, and meeting colourful characters along the way. They set out to deliver an experience that sparks those lasting impressions that pushed them to create their first standalone adventure, The Claws of Madness. This best-selling adventure is one that you don't want to miss.
MT, who is our winner today?
Your winner today is Van Beekber.
Yeah, I was trying to pronounce that either.
Have I got that right?
Congratulations, Van Beeker Burr. If you if you enjoyed the adventure, please leave Loresmith a review and tell him how much you enjoyed it.
Von Beek,
Van
BR.
Van Beekber. Whatever.
Von Beekber.
And now, what you've all been waiting for. Our Unearthed Tips and Tricks segment, where we bring you new and reusable material for both players and DMs.
Such a whore.
Our character concept today comes from Belly. Our character concept is Belly from patron Oliver, aka Spire of Tree of Dice. There's a link in our show notes. Definitely check it out. Abandoned at a young age, Belly, formerly Kewin Benson, lived rough on the streets of a densely populated city, slaying in gangs to survive, quickly gaining a reputation for both toughness and ruthlessness. He took over his gang and led them to prosperity. Seeking greater wealth, he left his once familiar home city to develop a new operation outside its walls, one of freedom and banditry. Now he leads the region's largest bandit organization, the Iron Bandits, and waylays caravans traveling between towns and cities when striking at some smaller settlements directly. So I really like this character concept for a couple different reasons. All the character concepts we do are always so heroic, and there's something that doesn't really get addressed is that characters have the ability to run darker characters. And who's to say that part of their backstory isn't some bigger grand scheme? In this example, I think it fits really well with anybody that wants to take the criminal background or maybe even the charlatan, where or any of those more kind of morally ambiguous situations. Specifically here, I picked out the criminal because they have a back I lost my spot. What?
Where'd it go?
What? What's wrong?
Switch back to the camera.
Oh shit! Sorry. Why didn't you just say that? I left it as the advertising line instead of the screen. Oops.
Money.
God damn it. I specifically went to the I think somebody deleted all my shit.
Yeah, the show notes seem to have all disappeared.
Yeah, where'd
What
my
happened?
fucking show notes go?
What happened?
Literally, it just like vanished.
I still have them all.
Oh, I see what. Okay.
What happened? Did they get moved?
Just push Control Z.
I
There we
tried.
go. Try that.
Did you do it?
I think I did by accident.
Yeah, don't touch. I was reading something. So, anyways, in this one, I think is great because it goes really well with the criminal background. The criminal background has a feature that basically it's like called criminal contacts, I think, that basically allows you to know a guy that you can always go to for information. And if you took on a character like this who became an adventurer, either to expand his gang or something like that, and he's got these kind of groups of they call them, like military cells or whatever, right? Throughout that he can use as a resource information. Likewise, you could probably even reflavor the noble background to fit something like this, so you can have this darker, gritty person who's got a lot going on outside of his adventuring, and he's now gone adventuring to expand beyond the local region, or maybe you're in the process of growing and becoming the biggest band. Obviously, this also works as an NPC for your DM. What do you think about this, MT?
I reckon criminal background's a great background for barbarians. Actually, if you want to play a Conan style character, criminal is is a like a Conan style barbarian. Criminal is a great background to pick up, and you can kind of become a little bit of a de facto thief with a criminal background. It gives you thieves' tools and deception, stealth. So if you're not actually playing a rogue, it's an excellent suggestion. Yeah.
Would you allow a player to run at your table that has something in their story about them being the leader of some sort of gang or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I would. It would depend on the It would depend on if you obviously don't want to give them at first level the ability to call up 3 or 4 flunkies at any chance to help things out, or if you do, you need to build that into the adventures you're writing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's great to actually give, don't assume every character is an orphan. It's actually great to give characters some resources, some abilities, and that's what the backgrounds are actually trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I have some standing over here. I can call in some favors. They're terrific to actually then build that into your story. And as a DM, a great thing to do there too is when you is to have a situation where your characters are outmatched, and then suddenly the flunkies come in at the last moment, like the cavalry, and save the day. Like Gandalf riding down the hill. They're very fun moments, actually.
Yeah, right after he told everyone to leave so he could claim all the experience for himself and show up with new shiny armor and magic powers.
like
Yeah.
Gandalf and the Balrog.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any comments on this character concept?
I agree with you. It goes in the direction that most people don't even go in the first place. In fact, I think one of the few times I've seen anybody capitalize on the criminal background was when Ryan ran that one shot, and I took the criminal background, and for half the adventure, probably drove up notes going, "I know a guy."
Yeah.
I know somebody that can get that information for us, which is
Yep.
really fun. I remember we played. Did you ever hear the Terrible RPG?
It rings a
yeah.
bell.
Oh my God, that was
basically,
so much
you
fun.
write some features out on a piece of paper, and when you want to
Six.
use one, you tear off a segment
Oh
that's got to
yeah,
be so big.
that's Jim McClure, isn't it? Yeah, I
I don't
haven't
remember
played
if
it.
I think that sounds familiar, but
was great.
Yeah, Jim McClure wrote
one
it,
of my
yeah.
things was I just know a guy, so we were trapped and out of
Yep.
thing, and I was like, I know a guy with a van, and so I tore it in a van in the middle of this murder, text or freaking Jason scene shows up and smashes into the guy. We all jump in the back and drive away.
I
The
love
ones
it.
like it's
Brilliant.
in my wallet or something.
Yeah.
Like, we need a crowbar. It's in my wallet.
Yep.
Oh my God. So that's kind of what I'm reminded of a character like this as a criminal. So
Yeah.
I remember I took Pyromaniac.
yes.
It made things randomly explode for no reason whatsoever.
That'll do it for our character concept. Belly, definitely check out more of Spire's content at treeofdice.com. Our monster variant is the Fey Knight. So in our monster variants, we take an existing monster in the monster manual and we give you some tweaks to give it new flavor and new life. The Fey Knight origin is the Wit. It's going to lose its immunities and resistance to necrotic and silvered stuff and the sunlight sensitivity.
You mean white?
Is it white? It's Wit.
White.
Is it white?
It's white.
It's white.
Yeah.
You're fucking all wrong.
Wit is W-I-T.
I'm right, you're all fucking wrong, and I don't
Okay.
give a goddamn damn what you say.
Order up the
Goddamn
stick.
damn.
Made a joke based off the fact that it's pronounced white.
Yeah, like white privilege or something like that.
More like don't fight till you see the whites of their eyes.
Oh, that's funny.
Or,
Anyways,
or in that case, the eyes of their whites.
so you're gonna alter life drain a little bit. You're gonna call it Harvest Sorrow, and it's gonna lose the ability to res the humans as zombies. So now the interesting stuff that it gets, you're going to give it innate spellcasting with a DC of 13. You're going to give it minor illusion, and my favorite, ensnaring strike and misty step 3 times a day each. Now, they get a new feature called Fey Wild Challenge. The Fey Knight uses its action to issue a mystical challenge to a creature who can see or hear it. If they dare ignore your challenge or challenge of combat, they are psychically punished. For their audacity. Whenever a creature the creature has challenged attacks a creature that's not you, it takes 1d6 psychic damage, and then obviously the effect ends if it dies.
And then Escanor shows up.
A what?
7 deadly sins.
Ah, okay. And it can only have one feature act at a time. So the idea behind this character is that it can basically conquest paladin the shit out of somebody, locking them into a one-on-one thing, and then misty step to somebody else, forcing that
Yep.
person to chase them down or be punished. But that becomes very difficult if you hit them with ensnaring strike first. So now, not only can they not chase you, if they attack anybody else with ranged or anything, they are punished.
Ooh,
Yep.
have three of these
Nasty.
show up, but then they keep teleporting around, kind of like the hidden ball.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
which one's
that's
which?
awesome. Yeah. So you wouldn't if they're all the same, like three brothers, triplets. That's awesome. And they fucking you get attacked, but you don't know which one fucking just stabbed you. Oh, that's great. Oh my god, that's awesome. And because they can
You're welcome.
They can ensnare strike you, you can't move, and they can misty step away, allowing them to hit multiple targets. What do you think about this, MT?
Look, I love actually Fae characters. I really enjoy Fae adventures, and you know, I often wish there were more Fae creatures in the monster manual whenever I'm searching.
Well,
So
now there's one more.
yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
Would you use something like this in your stories and campaigns?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think I mean it's giving monsters some really clever tactics like this is a great way to keep the characters on your toes. You know, you spoke about the. I've had a couple of DMs say, "Oh my God, what am I going to do if my players read your book and learn how to play the game really well?" But actually, you can always come up with fascinating new challenges for them as a DM. So
Absolutely.
I think it gives you lots of great options.
What do you think, B? Got anything?
I think it'd be terrifying for those triplets.
Why? Because you can tell them apart.
And no, what you do is you give them that one little thing that can tell them apart, but you have to have the players doing
Perception check.
perception checks, and by the what third, fourth round they finally figured out, but there's all the thing just got.
Like, well, no, we can tell them apart. Oh, that's funny.
We're all dead.
That'll do it for our monster variant, the Fey Knight. Our encounter of the podcast comes from the Kind GM, one of our newest Crit Nation members. So welcome on Twitter. I titled it "The Hidden Meal." All the party goers in a banquet hall have been found dead. All the doors were locked from the inside, and no traces of poison have been discovered in the food or drink, and no obvious signs of violence. Here's the trick. A mass illusion is hiding the truth of it. A hungry spirit naga has cast hallucinatory terrain and and at this very moment is coiled around somebody of importance. Maybe somebody who wronged them, or maybe another player that's been kidnapped or something, and is currently devouring them in this room. Unbeknownst to the party, they must see through this disguise to discover the hidden truth that is in plain sight.
Okay, I must ask, did that meme I make this past week inspire this?
I have no idea. You'd
Okay.
have to ask the Kind GM. What do you think, MT?
Yeah, no, terrific. These are such fun encounters. You know, it's the classic locked room encounter where you go in there and you think, you know, what on earth has happened here, and you know, then there's a classic D&D twist at the end, which is a nasty monster's trying to eat everyone, which is where they all end up. But you know, lots of fun for the players to go in, to sit there, to come up with theories, and then eventually unwrap the truth. So yeah, absolutely throw this in.
Was there anything you would add to this to enhance it?
Um,
I got to poke at that brilliant brain of yours, that font of knowledge.
I think. Well, I think the challenge. I think the way to enhance this is to get a little bit of backstory to tie into your campaign.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, so where is this taking place? And why have they come to you as the adventurers? Is this for example, it could be an entire village. You know, it was maybe every year they have a great feast or something like that. So there's something special about that feast that they do every year. Maybe a visitor to the town has come and found everyone dead there, and then the actual what they were celebrating every year could be something that ties in with the monster itself in some way, shape, or form. You know, maybe they're celebrating the defeat of the Naga. 500 years ago, and one of the Nagas come back to exact revenge. So yeah, you tie a little bit like that in, and
I
yeah,
like
away
that.
you go.
Yeah, the Naga are notorious for their vengefulness. So maybe the
Yeah.
person that they've kidnapped is like the heir of one of the heroes and something like that. That's dope.
Yeah.
That helps slay them. So
I remember there was a town that had a pie baking contest every year.
yeah, that was in
Yeah.
Banquet of the Damned, which is an amazing adventure. You should sign up at critacademy.com and be entered to win.
God. Anytime there's an opening.
And for the record, the meme I referenced just now was I screen capped a scene from the Netflix show Disenchantment, and I photoshopped it in a way where essentially I took a scene where the main characters were standing in front of an entry way, and there's a couple guys in their underwear standing next to them, and I punched in, "If you don't ask what we did in the basement, we won't ask what you did at the party."
Oh
and,
yeah,
and then it cuts the room full of dead bodies. Deal.
that's funny. That'll do it for our encounter of the podcast, the hidden meal. Brandon, would you like to take our magic item?
I'll take the magic item of the week. Yes, it is the sun disk of Pelor. It's a holy symbol, very rare. Did I say that right?
Paylor.
Not even close.
Pelor.
Paylor.
Pelor. Pele?
Motherfucker. I'm gonna stab you.
The
My
sun disk
pencil.
of Pelor. Bitch. Holy symbol, very rare. Requires attunement by a cleric or of Pelor. This disc, like holy symbol, with a sun emblazoned on it, flashes with the light of Pelor, as your faith unleashes a radiant sun that sears your enemies. This symbol has 5 charges. While holding it, you can use an action to expend 1 or more of its charges to cast the Flame Sphere spell, with a spell save DC of 15, and from it is a radiant damage.
Nice.
Yeah. For 1 charge, you can cast the 2nd level version of this spell. You can increase the spell slot's level by 1 for each additional charge you expend. Choose a number of creatures up to your wisdom modifier. While within 20 feet of the spell, they deal an extra 1d4 radiant damage when it hits with a weapon attack. The holy symbol regains 1d4 plus 1 expended charges daily at dawn. If you expend the holy symbol's last charge, roll a d20. On a 1, the holy symbol crumbles into ashes and is destroyed.
I will never use more than 4 charges. Ever.
MT, what do you think about this? You've had a lot of
We,
experience with stuff
yeah,
like
make
this.
me think a tiny bit about the holy symbol of Ravenkind in Curse of Strahd, actually, which certainly makes the final encounter with Strahd a bit of a cakewalk if you've picked up almost any of the toys in Strahd. The last battle will be good. I was actually thinking when I looked at it, I was thinking. I mean, when I look at something like that, like the idea of flaming sphere doing radiant damage, I think, well, you want to have some sort of visual attached to that. What is it actually doing that it's not a flame? Maybe it's some sort of swirling mass of light or something like that it's actually doing that. But I also thought it would probably maybe you could expend charges and do sunbeam or something like that. Which is a fantastic high level spell. I think something like this, you will probably want to give it 1 or 2 tricks. Like the sun disk of Pelor sounds pretty rad. So you probably want a couple of little tricks in there rather than just doing the flaming sphere thing. But yeah, very cool.
I will be adding the sunbeam, depending on the level, and an appropriate number of charges. If I can make it 5 charges, so then you have
I think it almost would be. Yeah.
this powerful attack, but you might lose your weapon.
Yeah.
So very cool. Do you guys have any comments on this?
It is neat. Because I definitely recall how at low levels, Flaming Sphere is really fun.
Yeah, I agree. That'll do it for our magic item, the Sun Disk of Pelor.
I think one reason why I enjoy Flaming Sphere in particular was I remember in the 3.5 game I casted it, and I was totally picturing Pac-Man in my head as I was rolling it around.
Excellent.
Walk, walk.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Our Dungeon Master tip of the podcast is degrees of failure. Sometimes a failed check has different consequences depending on the level of failure. For example, a character who fails to disarm a trap chest might accidentally spring the trap instead of just failing. Usually in 5e, this trigger is triggered by something where they say if you fail by 5 or more. Whereas lesser failure means just the trap wasn't triggered and they botched the disarm attempt. Maybe they jammed something in there, or they just don't have the skill to unlock it. Consider adding similar distinctions to other checks. Perhaps a failed charisma persuasion check means that the queen decides not only not to help, maybe the queen decides not to help, but if you fail by 5 or more, maybe she throws you out on your can because you pissed her off for some reason in your discussion.
Ooh, you think he disarmed the trap?
You
Oh.
think you disarmed it? Go ahead, open it. I dare you.
Yeah. I was able to pick it, no problem, guys. Hey, Billy, why don't you open it?
Kaboom!
What do you think about this, MT?
Yeah. Yeah, they're I mean this is really good advice. It's oftentimes when the players roll low as well, like it everyone knows it's a there's an expectation something bad might follow. So it's if you roll a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or 4 on your persuasion check, it does fit very well that this conversation's suddenly going very badly. The one to be careful of, I think we all know, not to get trapped in, is the insight checks, where everyone's had the whole thing of, now I've rolled really badly on my insight check. Does that mean the truth is the opposite of what I actually of what you're actually telling me? And I think most of us, if you settle on just saying, if you fail the insight check, you just don't get any read at all on what's going on.
Or
Because
or that classic example. I thought you said it was clear. I said it looked clear.
yep.
One thing I've been experimenting with is when they give me an insight check, and just some people say, I want to see if he's lying. Give me an insight check. I've been changing from you sent something about it to focusing more on physical cues. Say you roll me a 9, right? You see a little bit of sweat running down his face, but it is kind of warm in here. You notice his eyes dart back and forth, or he constantly is looking at something in his book, or giving little subtle things like that, those micro expressions, as opposed to just saying, he's telling the truth or he's lying, which is something that for a long time I fell into, and I'm trying really hard to move away from that.
It's a great show.
I think that's a really good idea, because it's funny with insight, the expectations people have with the insight skill, what they can do, people treat it like it's virtually like ESP or something. It's crazy. I want to do an insight check on all sorts of things, and you're right, it should be something that's very subtle, and in most instances it's probably going to be very ambiguous, whatever read you get. You're not reading people's minds.
Yeah.
Right. Do you have any insight into this, fellas?
I
Get
definitely
it?
think.
See what I did there?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But I definitely think it is kind of nice to add additional consequences if you epically screw up.
Yeah, well, and that's something that's not innately part of 5e, like the
No.
critical failure.
Yeah.
Has it ever been actually part of the rules? Or is that just something players created?
I can't recall seeing it. Yeah, no, I don't know for sure. I don't think there is a critical failure rule though.
It's the myth that keeps on going.
Yeah, and I think this is a way to pay homage to that, but I don't think it needs to be, I dropped my sword and stabbed myself in the foot level type shit. But getting a misinterpretation of what you're seeing, like if you get, especially on those medium checks, like you give me a insight check and you get like a 13, I start saying, well, there's sweat running down his brow and he looks a little nervous, but what the hell does that actually mean? Who the fuck knows? You don't know if he's lying, he's telling, maybe he's got a nervous tick or something,
Or he has indigestion.
What's that?
Or he has indigestion.
Oh, yeah, maybe he ate something bad. Maybe he's got the shits, and he's just like, I gotta go to the bathroom, stop talking to me.
Yeah. Just a correction there. I just had a quick look. The Dungeon Master's Guide and the optional rules does have, critical failure. It does mention that.
Okay.
So,
But
chapter 8 of the
optional
DMG.
rules, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's not
Not
baked in.
We
Right,
stress
right.
the
And guy
optional
comes
portion.
stumbling out of the pub. He's like, "Hey, can I get 10 gold for a room, please?"
Hmm.
I want to roll the insight to see if he's actually telling the truth, if he wants to room or if he just wants to buy more booze. You roll the 1. Well,
Yeah.
not only do you believe him, but you feel the need to give him 20 gold.
Yeah. And you buy him a few
Making
drinks.
it rain on him.
And you buy him a few drinks.
Yeah, let's go have some booze. That'll do it for our Dungeon Master tip, degrees of failure. So for our player tip, we always will say don't be a dick together. After we say it, because of timing, you will then say it. And then I'll squish them together in the post-credit. Post-edit.
Okay.
Our player tip of the podcast is
Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick.
He tried. After we say
Didn't work?
it, no.
Sorry.
Not at all.
Everyone tries every time. They're like,
That
"I
doesn't
think I
work.
can get it." It doesn't.
I know they're on the other side of the planet, but I'm still gonna time it right.
Well, we had one shot onslaught a couple weeks ago, and they
Oh my
tried like
God.
3 times, and all 3 times I'm like,
Okay.
can't get
All right.
it.
I'll say it. Let me say it. All
Oh.
clear. Don't be a dick. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Yep. Our player tip of the
Okay.
podcast is
Don't be a dick.
And you can avoid dickitude by listening to M.T. Black when it comes to seeking quick victories.
I got this.
No, that's his. I talked to him about it. He's gonna take it.
Oh, okay. I don't mind if you want to do it. I'll do it. Okay. The key to combat success in Dungeons and Dragons usually lies in delivering as much damage as possible, as quickly as possible, while minimizing the damage you receive. The general rule is that once combat starts, you want to get as many weapons and offensive features active as you can. Be aware that the average fight takes just 3 to 4 rounds to complete. Fights that drag on longer than this are likely to deplete your resources dangerously. And I say, think of it this way: you're probably only going to execute 4 actions at most in a fight. So if you waste an action, you're reducing your combat effectiveness by 25% or more. If you think about it, actions are precious.
Yeah.
And so every time you're doing something in combat, you really want to be asking, is this going to do more damage to the enemy? Is it going to take them out? Is it going to reduce the damage you receive? And the reason, again, this was something I noticed with newer players, was sometimes they were just faffing around on the sides when combat starts, just because they lack a little bit of confidence. They think, look, I'm just going to run over here on the side. Then I'm going to stop and I'm just going to have a look and see what happens. And I might do something next round. You know what I mean? And it's just a little bit of a lack of confidence. And I want to say, actually, you're probably only going to do 3 actions in this, in this fight. You want to make sure every single one of those actions counts. It doesn't necessarily have to be swinging your sword, but you want to be doing something that is taking the fight to a conclusion, as quickly as possible. And it comes back to that action economy thing of that, missing around can make a huge difference. Just missing around can make a big difference in a fight.
Yo, newbie, you're a freaking barbarian. Don't just faff away on the side. You go to the front line and you take an axe to the face and you won't like it.
I've had that conversation, so.
Just to get so mad when we don't focus fire.
Oh my god, I don't
like,
understand.
Why
it.
aren't you guys attacking with single character or creature instead of all of it? You're failing. Stop it.
Well, it,
Yeah.
it often leads to somebody dying, and I was like, well, I took there's an image in one of the 4 ebooks that I cut out and took a picture, or I took a picture of it and put it on Twitter, and I'm like, look, focus fire, and it like basically says the number of times or number of rounds the enemies get and actions they get when you don't focus fire, and it's like 3 times as many. It's just like, whatever. Anyways, you make a really great point here that time is that every action is valuable. If you're so unsure that you don't want to take an action, consider readying an action for a specific trigger that might be a concern. So while you may still lose your reaction because that takes the readied action, it consumes your readied action. That is better than just waiting to see if something happens, I think.
And sometimes an action you do have might contribute more than you expect. Now, this is a slightly different example, but I remember one time we were playing Gamer World, we get random powers every fight. I got one that first I looked at, I'm like, wow, this is really situational. This will probably be useless. Very next fight, guess what happened? The exact situation. We came to a hallway that had us on one side, enemies on the other, and there was not 1, not 2, 5 laser traps throughout the hallway that we could see in plain sight. The ability I got was Black Hole, which was pull enemies towards a point.
Oh, dope. So all the enemies got dragged into it?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Guys, do not walk forward, whatever you do.
Yeah, readying actions
One,
are.
one other quick thing there: if you don't know what to do, use the help action. Help someone else.
Call for help.
You
There
know,
it is.
I just started learning
it's
about that
really
recently. Actually.
powerful, and it seems to be really underutilized. You know, you can, lend aid to your friend. You know, you can do things like distract the monster, or to help your friend target and get a better shot in, or
Right.
anything like that.
Or at least take the dodge action.
Yeah.
Go.
Something. Do something. Were you gonna say something, B?
Yeah, say readying action is a really awesome way of using tactics in this game. Unless you're doing it in such a way that Justin's players did recently. It was I had a readied action off of another player's readied action that was readied off of one of my actions already.
Yeah.
You broke my head.
I'm pretty sure we're not allowed to do that, but we did it anyway.
I have no idea. I think it just trigger says whatever the trigger is.
He raised in the
Well-
action. That'll trigger when his ready action triggers, which is triggered off of his ready action.
Yeah, I don't really know
It was a-
what the raw is on
it,
that.
it was a long chain.
Well,
Raw was okay,
well,
but it was we made it easily complicated.
yeah. Well, it
Yeah.
consumes everyone's reaction, so there's a cost to readying an action.
right.
But yeah,
Yep. So I think that'll do it for our player tip of the podcast.
Don't be a dick.
don't be a dick.
And you can avoid dickitude by seeking quick victories. So that'll do it for our show today. Before we close out, we have one more gift to give away. Compliments of Jeff Stevens.
Stevens.
A small village, empty of villagers except for one boy, found sitting and weeping next to a jester's pageant wagon. The boy explains that the villagers, including his family, followed a jester into the wagon and never came out. What madness could the adventurers face? Can they save the villagers? Or will they go mad trying? Can you survive the madhouse of Tasha's kiss?
Yeah, I saw that.
Who is our winner today, MT?
MP Panucci.
Justin's over here unleashing the warthog.
I just gasped myself.
He's done it twice.
Congratulations, MP Panucci. If you enjoy the adventure, please check out or leave Jeff Stevens a review. Make sure to check out all his other products. There's a lot of amazing content from that guy. The guy's fucking awesome. Head over to critacademy.com/Jeff-Stevens and check out all of his other content too. That'll do it for our show today. Before we close out, MT Black, do you want to give yourself one more plug? Where can they find you? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah, best place is Twitter, MT Black 2567 is where I'm at. But you can find me on Facebook as well under MT Black, and happy to take friend requests from folk who read and like my stuff. So reach out. I'm always pleased to hear from you guys.
Oh, son of a bitch. I just got yelled at again because I left the ad thing up again. Sorry. It's okay. You can't see his face anyway, so
Yeah, it doesn't
you're
matter.
getting less of our ugly mugs, okay?
They're just paying for our faces.
That's
see-
true.
I'd say not seeing us is actually a bonus.
When the episode goes live, fucker. When the episode goes live, I'll include a link to the browse option for all of MT's amazing content.
Thank you.
Your content is just awesome. I love it, and I really hope that everyone checks out your shit. There's a reason why you're a guild adept, man. You have amazing writing skills. So keep up the fantastic work.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you for coming on the show too. We really appreciate
Uh,
that.
Been a great pleasure. Had a lot of fun.
Good. I'm glad. It'd be
Good.
horrible if you're like, man, these motherfuckers won't ever stop talking.
Not at all.
All right. Well, please join us on our next episode where we will be discussing Captains and Cannons, a guide to ship combat in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition.
Yar.
Hey, MT, what is a pirate's favorite letter?
I don't know.
Really?
Oh, what R? R.
Well, see, you would think it was the R, but it's actually the C.
That's such bullshit.
No.
That's my joke. And you took it from me.
No. I stole that fair and square from
Oh, gee.
shit. Who was my first
Well, I
host?
screwed that joke up for you, didn't
Yeah,
I?
you did. You really sank like a schooner taking some shots from a galleon.
It's funny because I was listening to a comedian talk about flat earthers. He's like, "Have you ever talked to a sailor who crossed the Atlantic Ocean and goes, yes, by the third day we'll go wee," because we hit the bump.
So, just so everyone knows, there will be no live episode next week on June 23rd. I am going on my 10-year anniversary, so I'm really excited. We're gonna be gone, so there will be no episode next week. If you guys have any feedback, unearthed tips and tricks and topics you would like us to discuss, please send them to us. You can email them to us at critacademy@gmail.com or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Crit Academy.
We hope you've enjoyed your experience here at the Crit Academy. If you did, you can help others find the show by leaving a hopefully 5-star review on iTunes or platform of your choice. Or just send a message telling us how much you enjoy the show.
Couldn't make it, huh?
No, because you looked at me.
Also, be sure to give us a like and a share.
Once again, if you'd like to support the show, you can become a patron as low as $1 a month at patreon.com/critacademy or critacademy.com. Every dollar goes to helping support the show and making it better. You guys are actually funding most of our content. What is wrong?
Me.
Are you about to blow it up? He's about to loosen it. Every dollar that you invest, either buying our DM's Guild content or what the fuck?
Did you not see his dad joke?
What? No, I didn't. What's it say?
What is lean cause of dry skin? Towels.
Oh my god. Stupid dad joke. Happy Father's Day, by the way. I don't know if you're a dad, MT. Are you a daddy?
I am.
Well, happy Father's Day.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was. It's not Father's Day in Australia, actually, but I appreciate it anyway.
Oh, well, we're dumb Americans and don't know much shit about anybody besides ourselves. So, anyways, you can support our stuff by checking out our DM's Guild products and all that jazz. You heard it from MT Black. Buy our Unearthed tips and tricks, or become a gold tier and get a complimentary copy. It's awesome. You heard it from the man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah, totally recommend it. There's something about Australia because I mean, MT Black, he got a great product. The guy who does our voiceovers for our ads, that's Lee. He's an Australian.
Yeah, it's just almost like Australians are just awesome.
Sexy ass voice.
RJ is awesome.
Well,
too.
have you see what they had to fight every day?
Yeah,
to survive?
fucking
We love D&D down here.
spiders the size of fucking dogs.
It's like, that's an interesting creature you made up. Where'd you get the idea for that? I saw a scorpion outside.
I looked outside my window. Oh my god. Brandon does commissioned art, full body color art, and line art. You can find all his prices and all his samples over at our Facebook page.
We can find a stylist.
I can find my fucking stylus.
Make sure to subscribe to our show at critacademy.com. Follow us on twitch.tv/critacademy and subscribe on YouTube so we can help you on your future adventures, as well as be entered to win cool prizes each and every single week. We give away 3 amazing pieces of content. Definitely check them out. Make sure to check out our fellowship members as well. Inter-party conflict, Gabe and Jeff do an amazing job answering your questions to help bring you the best tabletop experience possible. D&D Character Lab, those guys are awesome as well. They every week they get together, they build complex characters and argue whose baby is better, like a couple of real badass bards. So
Mine.
definitely check them out. Also check out Brute Force and Ignorance and The Kind GM. I think that'll do it. I am your host, Justin.
And I'm your guest, MT Black. Thanks for listening.
I'm your co-host, Brandon.
And I'm your co-host, Ian.
It's like we don't matter.
Oh, sorry. This is what's in the show notes.
In his defense, it doesn't say anything about you guys in the show notes.
It's okay. We love you anyway.
Thanks for listening. Keep your blades sharp and spells prepared, heroes. Everyone wave to the camera and say goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks for joining us on Twitch. I'm trying to find the end button. There it is.